An interview to do.
Welcome, Mr. Murrell. We've looked forward to this. And we thank you for coming. Oh, John, now? Yeah, we've looked forward to this. And your first question is just general. We've read your resume and we know something about you. Is there something you could tell us about you that is not on your resume?
Well, there's certainly plenty, because resumes are looking at one page, and I couldn't get it down. Start out with my family. My wife Summer and I have been married for 19 years. We have two sons, Jetson and Kaiser. They're both students at Heritage High School. And my wife Summer just completed nearly a 20-year career working in school. And she had the opportunity to go into full-time Christian ministry at our church as director of education. So she recently took that position and worked in Blount County schools for almost 20 years. We're Blount County people. We love it. We've invested our children here. We live in Townsend, along the Little River. It's where we call home. And both of us grew up here. My wife and I both were both graduates of Heritage High School. I'm older, class of 1993, and my wife is class of 1996. Our sons, Jetson and Kaiser. Jetson is a junior, he'll be class of 2023. And our son, Kaiser, who's a freshman, will be class of 2025. They've been served very, very well in Blount County schools. Starting with Walden in kindergarten, and going all the way through Heritage High School in the next few years anyway. But they have been served very well. We're very blessed to be part of Blount County schools. And you probably, a lot of y'all know me pretty well, so you probably know my why. This is where I've been. My whole career has been here. I love Blount County schools from top of my head to the bottom of my head. You won't find anyone that loves it more. You want to see it succeed. In fact, this is the only place that ever want to be a superintendent. You're never going to see me apply for a job anywhere else as superintendent. I love my job that I do right now and how I serve the school system. So this is not a stepping stone thing for me. It's just because I love Blount County schools so much. So that you will never see my name anywhere else besides here. So you can rest assured on that. But when I tried to drill down on my why, I think about what Blount County schools has meant to my family for 6 generations. My sons are 6th generation Blount County school students, going back to schools in Kings County. I'm going to start by telling you a story about my grandfather, who was the most significant person in my life next to my parents when I was growing up. And I'm going to show you a picture of him here. And it's not real big, but you can probably see it. And if you notice, he's in an Army uniform. Served here in World War II. My grandfather graduated from high school when he was 29 years old. That seems pretty old. We usually do 4 years in the summer now to graduate high school, so 29 just seems pretty old. Most of our kids are 17, 18, 19, even during that time. My grandfather graduated from high school at 29, as I said. He was born in Spencefield, which is part of now the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. As the National Park was coming in, his family moved out, moved on the side of Ridge Mountain, Mountain Dry Valley, beyond the Tuckleegee Caverns. And when he was junior in high school, the United States entered World War II, and he was drafted into the Army. And he went to the Army, he was there for about 40 years, came back, married my grandmother, they started a family, and he started working at Alcoa, so he worked graveyard. It was real important for him to finish his education. And he got a hold of the principal there at Townsend and said, I really want to finish my education, can we get this to work out? So he would go into Alcoa at night, work from 10 to 6 or 11 to 7, they did different shifts, and then he would go into Townsend High School and finish his requirements for graduation. Education meant a lot to him. And that carried over into his children. All of them got post-secondary training, vocational training of some sort, career. So that importance of education is a cornerstone for our family. And I think fast forward 30 years from that, and my mother, by the way, my mother was able to attend my grandfather's graduation. She was 1 or 2, I believe. That's an interesting fact there. But fast forward 30 years for a young child like me who started school at Rockford Elementary, who struggled to learn how to read, who had academic struggles in middle school, who had adverse childhood experience in middle and high school, and had some troubles finding my niche. But I had people standing in the gap, just like they stood in the gap for my grandfather, to say whatever it takes to make sure he succeeds, just like they did for my grandfather. And I see that with my own sons, teachers standing in the gap. And what does that look like for 10,250 other kids? Is that a stage academy to help them graduate high school? Is it a hybrid virtual program? Is it a new high school in Eagleton community? is a response to intervention in all our schools. It's whatever it takes, and that's kind of the theme in Blount County. I would say we have a tagline. That's why I say our teachers do. They do whatever it takes. Our principals do, our central staff, whatever it takes to make sure kids succeed. So that's not why. I love Blount County schools too, and it's just where we are, and we love this place.
What will you do to create an atmosphere in the schools that will lead to educational excellence for all students?
I think everything has to be driven by our vision and mission. That is set by our board. And I think it's something we have to live out on a daily basis. Our long-term end game is graduating students who to achieve excellence. So what does that look like over a 13-year period of time? But day to day, we have 1,650 people going to work saying, I'm going to maximize the academic growth rate of the student. Okay? Every one of them. That's what we do. And that's our commitment on a daily basis. All of our decisions are going to be driven by the strategic plan. We have a recent one adopted by the board, and that's going to drive our decisions. But when you boil all that down on a daily basis, what are we going to focus on? And I've got big five we're going to focus on. And one's relationships. It's a difficult time to teach. It's a difficult time really to be a student. I have 2 high schoolers in my home, and I know that there's a lot of pressures on the students. There's a lot of pressures on teachers. We don't have good relations. I remember some of the people that pushed me. I had a really strong relationship with them. So that's number one. If we're going to expect people to go where we need them to go in a place they don't think they can go, then that relationship has to be number one. I think next is safety, and not just physical safety. I think it has to be emotional safety. So emotional and physical safety have to be, after relationships, have to be the second one. And following that, a common curriculum and assessments, especially in ELA and math. That provides equity when we provide those high-quality materials for students. That levels the playing field when we provide the grade-level curriculum for them to succeed in. After that, data-informed decisions. So every decision we make about students is going to be data-informed. Okay, so how do we move this student based on where their data is? And then time on task. Following our schedules, following what we need to provide for our students. And I think for the district staff, what are we doing in that commitment to excellence? And this is what I would expect of myself, and I would expect this of the district staff, is to be in schools, be visible, be supportive, provide the resources necessary. One thing I'm going to commit to, if selected for this position, is morning office hours. I know I've had Christy over in my corner. She goes, a lot of people want your time when you're director of school. I know she's thinking that, but I want to start my day in school. And I think that's very important. Checking on principals, checking on teachers, going into classrooms. I think visibility is key. And I'll expect the same thing of our district staff, leadership team.
What do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position? I certainly could list some personal characteristics that I can bring before you, but I really think the strength for me is the strength of experience. I've been the assistant director for 11 years. Mr. Britt gave me the honor of moving into that position in 2011. And I take great pride in that role. I'm on the front lines watching things, and I know what you don't know what you don't know. There's things I don't know that Robert does on a daily basis. That's not lost on me, and I know when you step in those shoes, there'll be things you see that you didn't think you would see. But I do think that's, I know where we have been, where we were, where we're going in relation to that. I've been the district officer for 15 years. Most of you, I think it's on my resume, but I haven't, when I came here, I came as elementary supervisor, so I do have some connection to the elementary curriculum piece and assessment piece. I work pretty much in every department up here, or have some oversight, except for facilities. I have been involved in conceptual and planning phase facilities, but not directly over that. As far as budget, I work very closely with Mr. Logan in the business office as we prepare budgets each year. 87%, I may be off a little bit on that percentage, is personnel. And I've been your director of personnel for 12 years. So I work very closely with him every year as we plan staffing for the next school year. So I do think that's my biggest strength. In talking to superintendents, the big three is board, budget, and personnel. And I have a lot of experience in budget and personnel. I do have some experience with board, as I plan different things for you all after a board retreat and things of that nature. So I think that's what I bring, is really the strength of experience.
Good morning, Mr. Murrell. Criterion 1 has exceptional listening skills with a commitment to accessibility and an open door policy. Question number 1, what evidence can you cite to show that you are a good listener?
I certainly can cite some evidence, but I think really after this meeting, probably talk some people in my schools to ask them if I'm a good listener, principals, teachers, and I think they would agree that I would be. But I think inherent in director of personnel role is listening. We're the third largest employer in Blount County. 1,650 employees is huge. We have 2 full-time people that manage the human resources, the affairs of that many people. It's a huge organization. We listen to people all day long. And I really think, I had a good friend of mine who was an HR director, and she said that the HR, human resources, is the conscience of the organization. That inner sense of what's right and wrong. And in guiding people that we're constantly, we find people in their most fragile states. You know, they've had a diagnosis that is life-shattering. They've had a spouse pass away or a child. And we're there to try to provide them resources. And so we're doing a lot of listening. Unfortunately, one of the less glamorous parts of my job, I do a lot of investigations, so I do a lot of listening with that, employee investigations. So I think that's where we would find the evidence is in personnel.
Question number 2, give us an example of when you've changed your mind and taken a different course of action as a result of listening to others.
In 2007, I had the honor of being offered the position of Director of Elementary Schools and Federal Programs by former Director of Schools, Mr. Alvin Ford. A great honor of my career. He was a great mentor. And he asked me to do 4 things when I came here. One was a common reading curriculum, a common math curriculum, brain-compatible learning, and response to intervention. That was huge. Those are all 4 big projects. I thought I'd have a whole lot of time there so we could work through this. I was young and wanted to get things done real quickly. But we were able, that first year to get off the ground, the previous year we had piloted a reading curriculum. I have to say, we had 12 elementary schools at the time. Prospect and Union Grove were added on later. So we did jump that hurdle, implemented that system wide in all 12 elementary schools the following year with a response to intervention component in reading. So we were doing 2 big things there. We knew that math was coming on the following year. We had a lot of work to do in math. We had 12 different curriculums. And even within schools, we're doing different curriculum. So we had to get people on the same page. We were trying to work on Tier 1, but you don't know Tier 1 instruction is that base instruction that you provide in the classroom for all students. It's that equitable piece that everyone gets. We really needed to strengthen that, but we had a lot of things going on, and I wanted to jump into what's called differentiated instruction at the time. Big project had its own theoretical framework, but we were doing too much. And just speaking with principals, speaking with teachers, speaking with district coaches and other supervisors, we need to pump the brakes a little bit on this. And that year, we pumped the brakes a little bit. We knew the math was coming up, but I think that was just a result of this. I wanted to get things done quickly. Mr. Ford had faith in me that I could get it done, and I wanted to get it done. But that was just an example when I just need to slow down a little bit. We all probably have those examples in life.
Question number 3, in your administration, what avenues are open for you to listen to the concerns of employees, students, parents, and the community? How would you plan to have time available for all involved?
I know as director of schools, you're pulling in a lot of directions. You have your community constituents, your school level constituents, parents. We have 20-some thousand parents. So I mean, just that alone, 1,650 employees, 10,250 students. That's big. But what I think just boil it down to is extensive visibility. I think you have to be out and about at functions, at schools, frequent visits to schools and events there. I think you have to have a quick follow-up time. We follow a rule here 24 hours. Even if you don't have the answer, you at least respond to them and say, I have your concern, this issue, and I will respond back to you, but I need to find some information. So I think that's something, a follow-up is huge. After visibility, follow-up is huge. One thing I would like to institute here to just have an intentional piece embedded into how we listen to people is to have an advisory council at each of our schools. So it's staff, student, and family community advisory council. That will meet on a rotating basis. Of course, I would have to work with Christy on getting all that scheduled, but over a 3-year period of time, meeting with all those advisory groups at all 21 schools. And I think as you continually have intentional processes in place, you're always hearing those concerns and trying to improve the school system. So I'd say those would be the 3 things I would do.
Criterion 2, has the ability to unify diverse groups and build and maintain high morale among employees. Question 1, how can you bring together a diverse, talented group of individuals to form an effective team?
As somebody says, teamwork is what makes common people capable of uncommon results. And I would be remiss not to brag on our district leadership team here now. I've never worked with more positive, energetic, results-oriented people. They work hard. So those people are going to be on this team. If I'm director, they're going to be right here working along, and we're going to be in this fight together. But as we have positions available here at the district office, we'll fully vet them. I expect people to be energetic, positive, results-oriented when they come to the district office. And we'll look at diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, and see how that fits to the team. One thing I really appreciate about Mr. Britt's leadership is he wants you to tell him no. Say, I don't think we should do that. And it doesn't bother him. And that's the way I want to be as your director. I want to surround myself with people who will challenge me. Say, I don't think we should do that right now. Or we maybe should go this path. And I think you have to have a diversity of thought as well. You don't want yes people on your executive leadership team. So that's kind of the process I would follow to make sure we're getting highly effective team members to the district staff.
Question 2, describe a situation related to your current job that demonstrates your ability to inspire and motivate people.
One of the most exciting things that we started in our 2016 Human Resources Strategic Plan, which, by the way, anytime we do a new district strategic plan, we also, my staff and I, do an HR strategic plan. So all the pieces from the strategic plan that we can put in place in our HR world. So one of the things that started in 2016 was our Spotlight on Excellence. You've probably seen that. We celebrated, we had our Spring Spotlight Day yesterday. So you probably saw some things on Facebook, Twitter, different places. We've recognized over 1,500 employees since 2016 with that program. You wouldn't believe when you go, maybe you all, some of you all maybe can go to this sometime. It's a great experience because you go into a classroom, you meet them where they are in the work they're doing and that they're passionate about. They have students there. I went in yesterday to an instructional assistant's classroom. She was helping a kindergarten teacher and awarded her with a certificate and a Lugia. All the kids just came running to her. And we're so excited that she was doing that. And that happens almost every time. So it's just a simple thing. It doesn't cost very much, but it pays great dividends at the school level. And they know they're walking on cloud 9 all day long and all week long, and they know that people recognize their work. And I think that's very important. One thing that's important to me as director of personnel as well, second point to this, is knowing people. I know most of the, I don't know all, but I know a vast majority of the 1,650 employees. I think that's important. I think it's important to walk in school and call somebody by name, no matter what their role is in the school system. I wish I knew all 1,650, I do not, but maybe that's a goal I can set to try to make sure I know their names. But that's really important to me. It's important to them. If you call them by name and you know what they do for that school, and you know the value of their work, that pays great dividends for inspiring employees.
Question 3, cite an example of what you have done to build, maintain high morale among staff.
2 different programs. We started in 2011, which was my first year as HR director for Blount County. The Excellence in Education, we just celebrated our 12th annual. And that's where we recognize all of our certified staff. We also name our elementary, middle, and high teachers of the year. We do that every January in time to get those names to the state for the State Teacher of the Year program. We also recognize teachers in mathematics, reading, counseling, related service. So there's several categories, and many of you all have been to that event, and it's a great event. And we have people from all over. We have family members, spouses, community members that are there. It's a great way to celebrate Blount County schools. The second that we started in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is our 5th year, is Go Be Excellent. So we knew that there was a need for us to do more for our classified staff and to recognize them. So the year prior to that, we started an Employee of the Month program, but then we transitioned to Go Be Excellent. So that's coming out. You all have all received an invitation to that. It's the last Thursday of the month. And we recognize school support employees, special education, maintenance, custodial, after-school programs. So we recognize people from all those categories. We recognize the finalists for Employee of the Year in each of those, and then Employee of the Year that we named at that event. So it's a great way to celebrate our classified staff who work so hard on a daily basis.
Oh, good morning, sir. This criterion speaks and writes effectively to communicate the success as well as the needs of the school system. What evidence can you cite to demonstrate you are an effective communicator?
Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke Blue Devils basketball coach, says effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. And I think that is key for all of us in this organization. I think if I'm looking at a couple of examples for you to see what I do as far as communicating with people, for the last 11 years I've had oversight on the weekly staff meeting agenda for all district staff, whether that be executive team or supervisory. So I take care of those agendas. We know what we're going to talk about. We also know all the follow-up from that. So if there's action items that need to be taken care of before the following week, then I'll take care of that. Follow up with Mr. Britt as needed, and Christie as well. She helps us greatly with that, make sure we follow up on the things that we say we need to follow up on. So that's one piece. We're constantly in communication with that. I also communicate with my departments. I oversee human resources and now the student services division of the school district. So I meet weekly with HR staff, and we have a set agenda. We go over all those pieces that are coming out the week. Also have monthly and quarterly student services meetings, and we do staff retreats and things of that nature. We just recently in our student services division finished the Power of the Positive Team. Talked about teamwork. We had some new people jumping on board, so that was one of the things we wanted to study as a group. So constantly communicating, constantly talking to the folks who are working daily on these priorities for our districts. It's an honor to work and lead with these people.
What have you done to help the public understand the needs and success of your school system?
I think that participation leadership, our class of 2019, that's something that we have someone participating in that every year. That's a good process for our school system to be part of the community dialogue on what's going on in the schools. It gives us a great opportunity to highlight our schools. We always go to 2 or 3 different schools. I know Mr. Clark has always been really good at when we let it present to the leadership line. That is a great way for us to talk about our needs, talk about our successes. Also, just in your all's role, public board meetings and things that I've spoken at, work sessions, that's part of the public. And the public knows what we're doing and what we're doing out there. Promoting our events on social media, that's one of the big things that are Go Be Excellent, Educator Hall of Fame, Excellence in Education, Spotlight, all those things go out on social media, so it's always talking about our successes. And then me personally serving on advisory boards in the community to get our story out, I think is key.
Thank you, sir.
Hang on just one second, I don't want to forget my fault here. Good morning. Criterion number 4, foster support, confidence, and pride within the community for the school system through timely information sharing and providing meaningful opportunities to be involved. The first question, what have you done to create excitement and to generate support for public schools?
You all, because I was working on this, a lot of these questions are like, so I'm gonna
They
repeat
do.
some things. I'll repeat some things later, too. But what I take most pride in is the work of the Human Resources Department and 3 big events that we do every year. I've talked about them already: Excellence in Education, Educator Hall of Fame, and Go Be Excellent. We do those every spring, one in January, one in March, one in April. It's a busy we're very, very busy during that period of time. And we do that every year. So there's a different group of people there every year. Over half the people that are there are not connected necessarily to Blount County Schools. They may come as a guest, they may come as a spouse of someone, or as a community member, or as one of our corporate sponsors. You're always putting out positive things about the school system and all those events. We see everything on social media. So I would say that's where I take the most pride, are those three things. I think they're cornerstones of what we do. High-performing districts recognize excellence, and I think we do that with those events. And that was one of the things that Mr. Rich challenged me to recreate human resources. That's a byproduct of that. I think we have to recognize people, and that generates support in the community.
Number 2, how have you worked within a community to generate support for the school system? Again, we realize we've realized this throughout the week. There's a lot of overlapping, so apologize.
I tried to take a different lens on this from the recruiting human resources end. So we work with colleges and universities all across the region. One of the biggest things we've been working on to improve our pipeline for educators is grow your own programming. We have partnerships with Lincoln Memorial University, and the University of Tennessee Knoxville. So we have people who are being trained to be teachers that we can hire once they're finished with their program of study. We have also started, you will hear more about this in the next couple of weeks, we have also started our own Grow Your Own program, which is reverse Grow Your Own. So we're identifying high school seniors who want to be teachers, and they're going to go through a program throughout their college experience. When they're finished, we're going to offer them a contract. If they'll graduate on time and get an endorsement in one of our hard-to-fill areas, which is high school, middle school and high school science and math, and special education. So if they will have endorsement in one of those, we would offer them a contract. So Grow Your Own program is big, and that helps generate support for what we're doing in recruiting. And of course, we're all around the region with job fairs, recruiting fairs, and I think that helps generate support for our pipeline of educators. So that's kind of the lens I took on that one that's real relevant to the work I do for the district.
And question number 3, we expect our director of schools to be active and visible in the community. How would you go about accomplishing this in Blount County?
And you heard me earlier talk about visibility. I think visibility within schools, but also within the community. District events, school events. We certainly have a lot of our own district events when you think about it. So getting to every cultural in schools will be different, but I think you have to be strategic about it and try to spread the wealth, so to speak, so you're out there, but also your central staff and executive team needs to be out there as well. The director can't get everything. It's just not possible. I think another way to do that and be visible with you is service on boards. I think that's key. I know Mr. Britt does that. I know that's typically an expectation of the director of schools. So we're certainly be willing to that, and also any kind of advisory capacity that I would be glad to fulfill. And then, of course, our college and university partnerships. Those are key to what we do as a school district, and how we train teachers, how we create pipelines for educators. So those are things that I would do to make sure I'm visible in the community for the board for Blount County Schools.
Okay. Good morning. Criterion 5 has to do with your experience in working with students, parents, staff, the community, and the school board in developing long-range goals and strategies for the school system and the determination and ability to accomplish those goals. Question number 1 is, how have you used planning and goal setting to improve your school or the school district?
Well, I'm going to speak specifically about my 15 years at the district office. I certainly was involved in school improvement plans prior to that, but I worked under 3 different strategic plans in my time here at the district office. If you look at our performance as a district, we've been level 5, school district 5 6 times. We've been exemplary district twice. So the work we're doing is working in a lot of areas. Certainly we have to drill down and look at different subcategories to make sure we're meeting the needs of students, but I think that data certainly speaks for itself. So we're under a strategic plan now that you all set last summer, effective instruction, equip students, and excellent culture. So we're working, everything is being driven by that, and will for the next 4 years, even under the new director. I also do, as I mentioned earlier, an HR strategic plan. We always set that at the same time that we have a new district strategic plan. So some of the things we're working on now are retention strategies, especially in the area of compensation. You all have been a big help with that. I'm going to mention that later, about some hurdles we had to jump over in the last couple of years, with teacher salaries especially. So that's a key part of our HR strategic plan, is retention strategy, which includes compensation. And then, of course, recruiting. In your strategic plan, you have an educator diversity recruiting policy. We are working on that as well. So those are two big areas of our current strategic plan that we're working for. And then if I drill down from that to our Student Services Division, each of our Student Services Department heads sets goals each year relative to their areas. So Mr. Brett and I meet with them on an annual basis, and then follow up with them on their goals relative to their areas and how they're impacting students. So that's how I use goal setting in the district.
Thank you. How did you obtain the support of students, parents, staff, community, and the school board in the development and implementation of the plan?
My mentor, Al, of course, says fast is slow, slow is fast. If you think about that, sometimes you get in a hurry, you don't have to get as far down the road as if you take your time. So I think with strategic planning, just as you all did last year, it was almost a year process that we followed. We had time. It's an open, transparent process. I think that's definite cornerstones of this needs to be that. We need diverse teams, so we have different stakeholders getting input into that. We have community input, board input, we have public meetings, and I think there has to be feedback cycles throughout that. So I think all of those things have to be in place if we want it to be effective and want something that people can tie to and they can get behind at the school district.
Thank you.
One thing for it. I'll be back about 30 minutes.
30 minutes is great.
You're up.
Yeah.
Has the wisdom to know when change is necessary. Has the wisdom to know when change is necessary and the ability to determine to generate such change, even in the face of opposition. Number one, describe the significant change you initiated in your district or school and tell us what evidence you have to show that it was a positive change. How did you build support for that change, even in the face of opposition?
I describe my impact on this with an example I'm going to use to you only in that I'm the staff lead for Collaborative Conference. This is a joint effort, and I'm very thankful to the board I mentioned earlier that you all have made beginning teacher salary a priority in the last couple of budgets. That's a difference maker for us in HR as we're trying to recruit people. So, but I do say I've been on negotiations, which was what it was called when I came here in 2007, and then took over as staff leader of the Collaborative Conference in 2011 when the law changed. So I've been on that for the last 15 years. So I am staff lead, as Mr. Rick has assigned me to that. That 40,000 mark was a spot we needed to get to as a district. We shouldn't be paying anything under that in Blount County. We are wealthy enough to pay that and plus. So I appreciate your commitment to that. But as we work with the Teachers Association, we have a really good relationship with President Rebecca Dickinson and the Teachers Association, and we also have our board team. We come together, we collaborate on Mr. Kirkland and Ms. Bain serve on that currently, so they're key members of that committee. But what we did last year, we knew it was going to take us some time. The whole schedule needed to roll. So what we tried to do is, let's break this down. So last year, what we did was really focus on that bachelor's lane. That's that 0 years experience. What's that beginning teacher salary? We were able to get that north of 40,000 in our agreement, and you all supported that in the budget process. So what we saw as a result of that change was, and I think Mr. Ritt may have shared this with you, but I'm not sure, the VA minimum moved up 46 spots in the state of Tennessee. We have 147 school districts. So we moved up 46 spots just in that one, just with that one move. In the VA with 10 years experience, we moved up 73 spots. I mean, that's over halfway through the whole schedule. And then with the VA average, it was over 24 spots. So just that one change that you all made as a board, I helped lead in the collaborative conferencing process, made that kind of impact. So we knew this year we would be coming, I'm going to mention this later as I speak, we'll need to look at that incentive for advanced degrees. So we've addressed that in this year. I expect to see the same impact on that. We need to continue to move that where it needs to go. We evaluate that every year as we look at our salary rankings across the region, across the county. So that needs to be a continuous focus. In addition to classified, you all have that as a commitment as well. So we need to continue. That's going to use that specific example. Now, I will not say that that was in the face of opposition. I think everyone on this board supported that, but it is in the face of competing interests and competing pieces of the budget. You all have a lot besides salary that you have to fund. So I would say not opposition. I think most of our people here did support that. But we did see significant improvements, and that's what I want to see going forward next year as well.
Number two, how do you keep up with the research? How do you keep up with the research and the initiatives that may drive change?
There's 4 different ways I do that. Involvement in professional organizations, actually 3, I apologize. 3 ways that I do that. Professional organizations, I'm a member of the Tennessee Association of School Personnel Administrators and also the American Association of School Personnel Administrators, and attend different professional development with those organizations. I'm a reader. I read journals, different books on leadership. And then, of course, every leader needs that informal network, internally and externally. So internally, I have people I call all the time, principals, supervisors, people who work if I'm trying to make a decision on something. So we all have that informal. And there's also the external. I have HR directors all across the state I'll call about something. So I think every professional has to have that piece.
All right, I'm back in the strategic planning lane, so there will be some repetition, I'm sure, but it's my favorite thing. Criterion 7 is about your leadership with successful experience in strategic planning, instruction, and curriculum development. So question number 1 is, tell us of 3 curricular or instructional improvements that occurred as a result of your leadership. What evidence do you have that they were improvements?
As I told you earlier, when I came to the district office 15 years ago, Mr. Hoare was the director. He asked me to be the supervisor of elementary instruction for the district, also federal programs, titles 1, 2, and 3. When I got here, I told Mr. Hoare that titles 1, 2, and 3 were really their own job, but that was the fact. So I was just teasing with him, obviously. It was a lot of good work, but it helped support what we were trying to do in elementary schools. So I would say that 3 things, I mentioned to you earlier, the 4 things that he asked me to work on. So I will focus on 3 of those. And that would be that consistent reading curriculum. That's one thing we definitely needed. 12 different schools, working in 12 different directions. Needed some commonality there. So we have some common assessments, common planning, common materials that we're working on. The other was the math curriculum, which we started working on extensively in 2008. And response to intervention was woven in there. Outside of Tier 1, we were supporting students in response to intervention. And I would say the evidence that we had from that, prior to standards change, and that was about 2012 or 13, I can't quote that exactly, but we saw significant improvements in students scoring proficient rates in reading and math in North County schools. So I would say, and that was the result of a lot of people's work in that area, me as the leader of the elementary instruction.
Let me just ask for clarification, and I think you said it, and my foggy brain missed it. When you look back at the intervention in the reading and math plan, you said you saw dramatic improvement. What period of time are you thinking about there?
Usually around 2010, 11, 12.
Okay.
So it took a few years. We had a lot of work we were doing when I moved into that position.
Yep.
But it took a few years to get there. We were also working on a lot of other things in Title I. We had our middle schools for Title I programming, so we started the literacy leader program in our middle schools, which is a game changer for them. We're launching some initiatives there. So very proud of that work.
Okay. I was just curious about the time. Okay, thank you. Question number 2, describe your involvement in the development of the school district strategic plan. How did you build support to accomplish the goals and objectives in the plan? You did. So now you have to do it again. We'll see if you give us the same answer.
As I mentioned earlier, I've worked on 3 different strategic plans in my time here at the district office. We have, the data speaks for itself. We've been elected 5, 6 times, delivered district twice. So I've been very heavily involved in that. The last strategic plan, 2016 to 2021, I was the staff lead on that. So I reviewed that plan annually with principals and the board, and as needed throughout the year. And then we met monthly as a district staff to go over, are we making progress in this area? What was our follow-up? What are some initiatives we need to make sure in the budget? So we made sure our budget was aligned with the needs that we had. So Mr. Logan ensured that we tied those two together. And with our current plan that we have, I've been involved in that well, especially in the excellent culture area. Two goals there that I mentioned earlier that are very specific to HR, the educator diversity recruitment policy, and then our compensation. Your goal is to rank in the top 25% in every category in the state. So very lofty goals, a lot of work we need to do in that area. So I'm kind of staff lead there. Each section has their own staff leads. So we're all working with our teams and trying to make sure we monitor those plans, adjust as we need to as we see the data come in. And of course, we'll be providing feedback to you as we did in February throughout that process.
So the staff lead title goes with the formulation as well as the implementation of the plan. You stick with it. Thank you. Okay. And last, describe your experience in interpreting and applying relevant student assessment data.
I'm going to go back in time. I got 4 different examples here. As a teacher, that was big for me to have formative and summative assessment when I was an elementary teacher. So we would do star reading and star math, which is what we typically used then, and look at growth in students, monitor their program, provide materials that they need to grow. As an assistant principal, I was at Mary Blunt, as I mentioned on my resume, and we did individual and grade level meetings to talk about data, formative and summative. And then when I came here as elementary supervisor, there was a lot of data. When we look at 12 different schools and look at responsive intervention and reading math curriculum and monitoring at the school level and district level. And then currently, and you all know me more as an HR person and more of operations, basically what I function now, but I also evaluate 5 principals per year. So I have 4 elementary principals this year and 1 high school principal. So in that process, as they're setting goals for their school that are data-driven and data-informed, I'm part of that process as they look at their formative summative assessment. Our testing assessment coordinator on the Anderson helps us with that process. It's the information we need to support our principals. So I've been heavily involved through the years in this process.
Thank you.
We're going to try this mic. Is that better? Okay. Criterion number 8, experience as a teacher who understands the day-to-day operations of the classroom and has sound knowledge of instruction, curriculum, and educational programs. Question number 1, discuss your level of expertise in elementary and/or secondary curriculum instruction and describe where you gained this experience.
Well, I have to say, I love all K-12 work. My first love was elementary school. I love elementary school. Started out as a teacher. Miss Bailey and I talked together out of quarter. 24 years ago we started, and we were talking earlier, reminiscing about some of those who have been there, Mr. Heck and Mr. Taylor, Miss Bain. They were so good to us young people that just welcomed us in and made us part of the team and made us feel like we had a lot more experience than we did. And we had a lot to learn. But I really enjoyed that time. 7 years as an elementary teacher. I taught 3 different grade levels. One of those grade levels was when I was a graduate assistant at the University of Tennessee, but at Porter, I taught 2 different grade levels. Every core content area I taught. Ms. Craig, the principal there, required us to report assignment teaming, as you remember that. So you had to learn the curriculum both directions, grade level and then across the school. So we were involved in that. Also the integrated thematic instruction that came in during that time, brain-based learning model. So I was involved in the implementation there. Moved to Mary Blunt for 2 years as assistant principal, and we worked heavily on the integrated thematic instruction model there. It was a model school for the district and for the company, ITI. So learned a lot there and have a great love for elementary schools. And so when Mr. Ford asked if I would take on the challenge of elementary schools, I said absolutely, because I love elementary schools and we have a lot of work to do there. So a vast experience in that area. That's kind of my teaching background and curriculum instructional background in that area. Today, as I mentioned earlier, I do evaluations of principals. Some of the schools have been talking and working on those issues that we're dealing with as instructional leaders.
And question number 2, describe your experience in developing, implementing, and/or evaluating an instructional program that has improved the educational achievement of students.
And I'm going to use an example I used earlier to expand on that just a little bit. And one of the things that we take great pride in here is that we look at the issue, we tackle it, and try to improve it. I think that's what you can say about our district staff here. As I bragged on them earlier, they're very solutions oriented, so we take something. And we did that back in 2008. We hired a mathematics instructional coach to help us study the issues with our elementary math curriculum. It was a major need. It was something Mr. Hort asked me to do when I came here, and it definitely needed some focus. We had 12 different schools, 13 by that point, because Union Grove Elementary had been added up in 2008. We had elementary math curriculum all across the board and schedules all across the board. So we had to develop some consistency with some common materials and common time that we were going to spend on mathematics. I think that was big key during that time. So we made vast changes in there. It took us a little time. We had to adopt a new curriculum in that span of time. But as I had mentioned, we saw significant improvements in our proficient advanced levels from about 25% in 2009-10 to upwards of almost 70% before the standards changed. So that's a great achievement for the school district, and we're very proud of that.
Criterion 9 seeks information and ideas relative to the problem, makes decisions that demonstrate fairness, impartial judgment, appropriate analysis, and sensitivity for those affected by the decisions. So, Mr. Murrell, think of a problem brought to you recently. What was the problem and how did you handle it?
Certainly in my role in human resources, there's a lot of issues that come to my desk and come across my desk. Most of them are highly confidential, so it would be appropriate to discuss a lot of those in public meetings. But I will say one thing, and I will call it an issue, not necessarily a problem, but it may be, depending on how you phrase that. But I would say recently that issue of our teacher salary schedule, Ms. Dickinson and I met in the fall to decide how we were going to approach the collaborative conferencing process this year. We knew there was an issue with that master's plus 30 ES and doctorate lane. We need to incentivize that to some degree. We met with Mr. Logan, devised a plan that we brought before the collaborative conferencing team. So what is in your budget now is and what I think will make a big impact, similar to how the bachelor's lane was impacted, is that advanced degree incentive that's there. That wasn't our previous schedules, but in order to get to 40,000, we had to break it in chunks. It was too expensive to do in 1 year, as you all know. So I look forward to putting that in place, and I think that's going to help us retain people.
Tell us about the most important decision you've made in your last or current position. How did you involve the people who would be affected by that decision?
The example I'm going to use on this is site-based hiring at the school. I became the HR director in 2010. Mr. Brett had been here 1 year at that time. And that was one of the things he was wanting to move to, was a site-based hiring model. If we're going to require principals to be accountable for results, they have to pick their own teachers. We had a previous teacher contract that dictated some of the decisions the principals made. So that was part of this situation. But in that process, speaking with principals, getting their feedback, on board to do that. But also in that process, we set up very detailed protocols that we follow, that we still follow today. We tweak them every year as we get feedback from principals. So one example that we put into there is a team interview process. That was very big to us, to make sure it's not just the principal looking at that person, they get people involved that are going to be impacted by that. So that is one of our requirements of our hiring process that has been very key in us getting some high quality people into Blount County schools. I would say the other thing would be extensive expansion of our recognition efforts. As I said earlier, high performing districts recognize excellence, and that's something we needed to do, and we have done over the last 2 years. So I'm very proud of that. I mentioned some of those examples earlier, and I won't mention them again here, but we did discuss that earlier.
Criterion number 10, proven ability to develop and administer a comprehensive school budget, including allocation of resources, understands federal, state, and local funding issues. Question 1, Explain how you would develop a school system budget and to tell us who you would involve and how you would involve them.
I do bring some experience that I mentioned earlier to this process in assisting Mr. Britt and Mr. Roman develop the last 11 or 12 budgets as assistant director, so I do have some experience in that. Also have extensive experience in federal grants. As I spoken earlier, I was the federal programs director for Titles 1, 2, and 3 when I first came to the district office. Currently now work with several state grants, including Coordinated School Health, Family Resource Center, with department heads that are over those areas. So know a lot of the parts of the budget and the moving pieces of that. But I think it's thinking about the process we follow. And I think how we follow that, I think it always needs to start there. It always starts in the fall. And I think it starts at your board retreat. I think that's when you all have time to talk to each other, talk about the priorities, where are we going, what does this look like with the strategic plan. And then I think following that, when we tie things to the strategic plan, we look at what are those mandatory things. So there's going to be insurance increases and TCRS rate increases, those things that we can't, general liability, all the things we really can't control. So those certainly have to be plugged in there. And then I think through that process, we're very open and transparent. We have weekly meetings. We connect with principals, give them overviews. Our principals now connect with whatever that area is. Like for me, it's personnel, so for staffing plans for me, for Title I, they go with Dr. Chief Taylor, special ed is here. So whatever that department is, they kind of oversee, these are my needs for my school, and they convey those to those, and those department heads, and then we put those into the budget. So I think very open, transparent process. Take your time, think through it. Also, the compensation piece is huge. That has to be part of that every year. So that's how we'll go about addressing that.
Question 2. What steps would you take to ensure school funds are spent wisely and accounted for properly and in compliance with state and federal mandates?
I'd certainly like to brag on people because we have great people here doing work. So I'm very appreciative of Mr. Logan and his staff and our county government for having good checks and balances in place. There's a lot of things in place that help us spend wisely. There's a lot of checks and balances there. I think some things that we could look at is ongoing annual and specialized training for principals, bookkeepers, athletic directors to help them in this process as they're collecting monies and expending monies. Continue with some internal controls to make sure more than one set of eyes are looking at things. I think that's key. We are part of the public trust, and I think a lot of people need to be looking at stuff, including you all as a board. And then what I would institute putting in place is a monthly meeting with the CFO and assistant CFO here at the district office to get an update on all the general fund pieces, federal grants, Fund 177, to make sure I know where we are as a district moving forward through the year.
And for the last question, tell us about your most significant effort to obtain outside funding other than public funds for a project.
Well, that was interesting because they put parentheses other than public funds, and most of the things that we deal with at the district office are public funds. And I would say, I'm going to talk about public funds, but then I'll get to some other things I've done. But we do seek, and I say this for all of our supervisory staff here, we seek grants that are optional grants. Like for my department this year, we did the ELC grant, which is the epidemiology and laboratory capacity grant. As we do that grant, it will be good to test our students for COVID at school so we can get them back to school quicker, especially with with negative test results. So that was one we jumped into. The other was a homeless grant through through one of our title programs. Dr. Keith Taylor helped us with that. Kelly Roberts, who's over our Family Resource Center. So we're always looking for extra things. You have your standard federal grants and state grants, but then what are the extra things we can do to provide extra things for kids? So I did want to say that because I think that's important. Our people are always looking for extra monies to help students. But some things I've done in the past, I don't have much opportunity nowadays to do that, but some things I've done in the past when I was a teacher at Murrell Elementary, I was also a technology coordinator. So we started something called the Panther Proud, and I think it's still there. Christy was one of the parents out there, so she always helped me collect all the money and stuff. But thousands and thousands of dollars we've taken, and really basically funded our technology for the year. So anything we needed for subscriptions, teacher workstations, student workstations. We didn't have Chromebook books back then, so we had actual stations there in the classroom. So that really funded everything for the whole year. And Ms. Gregg, our principal there, was very supportive of that, and our PTO as well. So we brought a lot of money into doing that. When I moved to Mary Blunt, we did a classroom sponsorship program where minimum donation $250. We named the classroom in your honor, with a plaque outside. advertise for you. And the teachers, of course, we're going to spend that on reading math curriculum and supports, and also integrate thematic instruction and environmental things there. As far as HR goes today, that's an ongoing 12-year project. We're always looking for corporate sponsors for all of our events. And we need gift cards, stuff that I can't buy out of public funds. So that's ongoing every year, will be till I retire from HR there. So anyway.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming. We'll take some time now and just kind of hang out together, okay? Before lunch.
I do want to say thank you. This is an honor of my career to get to sit and talk to you all about working in schools. You have a big decision, and I think you'll make the right decision. Regardless of the outcome, I will still be here every day, playing along for the Buckhead kids, so you can rest assured of that. Thank you, Steve.